Hi, my name is Jared Mello, and this is Mellow Mentoring. Thanks for everyone who's been liking, commenting, and subscribing on my channel so far. It's greatly appreciated. And if you enjoy videos about psychology, mental health, self-improvement, and relationships, please give me a subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when I come up with more videos. Today's video is going to be a viewer question, and it's from someone named Being Better, who has her own YouTube channel as well. Go check it out. But Being Better asks, how can a bipolar spouse stay married? And how can you convince someone who has bipolar that they have a problem if they're not willing to get help or even admit they have a problem? Now, there's a couple parts to this here. One, I always tell people, you can't help anyone who doesn't want to help themselves. Bottom line. Because the first step to helping yourself is admitting you have a problem. And if you can't admit you have a problem, nothing's going to change. Now, narcissists are very good at this, which is why almost everyone will say narcissists just don't ever change. And you can't expect them to change because they can't get the first step. They can't admit they have a problem. They can't admit they're wrong. And so relationships with narcissists, albeit very fun in the love bombing stage, are ultimately useless and futile because more often than not they don't change. It just is what it is. Now, bipolar individuals, I have not noticed the tendency to deny they have problems, probably a little more so in men than women, but eventually people are able to admit they have a problem. Now, for the person who's not bipolar, there's a couple questions you got to ask. One, if the person is not willing to admit they have a problem, are you okay being in the relationship if they're not working on it? And I always tell people, you can never be in a relationship with the expectation others are going to change. We got to be okay with who they are right now because we have to expect them not to change. And if we're not okay with who they are right now, then the relationship is not going to work. Especially if the person is unwilling to admit they have a problem. So that's my one thing about if you're married to someone and they're not willing to change. Like, hey, don't expect it's going to get better. Chances are it won't. Now, if the person is willing to admit they have a problem, the other person still has to ask themselves, am I going to be okay being with this person? Because there's probably going to be about 4 sides of the person. There's going to be their normal self, there's going to be their depressed self, their happy manic self, and irritable manic self. Now, those moods can be controlled with medications or supplements and proper diet, exercise, or lack of drug and alcohol abuse, proper sleep. But in my opinion, nothing gets rid of them 100% of the time. There's always going to be something. And so we have to ask ourselves, if we're not the person who has the problem, hey, am I okay with being with those 4 sides? Like, legitimately, you got to ask yourself. And don't try to think you're more noble than you really are, because it's not an easy task. It's going to be difficult. But say the answer to that question is yes, I am okay with those 4 sides. Then it comes down to 2 big things. And this is for every relationship too. Communication and trust. And you're going to have some code words and some communication. Hey, what kind of mood are you in? And what do you want out of me, your partner, while you're in each one of these moods? You really got to lay it down like that. Because sometimes when people are depressed, they don't want to talk. They don't want to communicate, which makes things difficult. And the even more difficult part is, sometimes the communication part, when you don't want to do it, is when the person should want to do it the most, because it's what they really should be doing. And I know for me, because I have bipolar type 2, it's when I'm least willing is when I most need to do those kinds of things that are good for me. When I'm least willing is when I need those things most. And so it's definitely a fine line, because if you try to push me too much in one of those states, I'm probably just going to curl up and just refuse and put my arm up. But if you give me the freedom to choose to do the right things, I am much more likely to do the right things, as opposed to being pushed or coerced or controlled. And the relationships with someone who is bipolar is absolutely, it's a minefield. It absolutely is. And if someone out there is listening to this video and the other person is not willing to admit they have a problem, that's a major problem for you, because nothing's going to change. And like I said before, you can't help anyone who doesn't want to help themselves. And then I would legitimately ask you, like, do you really want to continue this relationship? Because you can't expect them to change, especially if they don't admit they have a problem. And then if they do admit it and they start doing what's best for them, then you really got to work with them a little bit. You got to work with them. You got to have some ground rules of what kind of things are ultimate boundaries that can't be crossed, maybe such as cheating or lying. Those are two things that, regardless of mental illness, as long as the other person's not narcissistic, that they should be abided by. You should still be able to be honest, and you shouldn't cheat. Because as far as cheaters go, not all liars are cheaters, but all cheaters are liars. And so those are the two real deal breakers for relationships. Get trust and communication. Don't lie, don't cheat. And as long as you're willing to put up with the several shades of your partner and the effects it's going to have on you, you really got to be honest with yourself. When that person's depressed, you got to know that you might be pulling more weight in that scenario. Right? You're not going to have someone who is at their best. Now, granted, we all have times when we're not at our best, and that's something that love can help. We help each other when we love one another. But we really have to just have that communication and honesty and continue to date one another. Continue to act like it's the beginning of the relationship. Keep things fresh. Keep things new. Don't go into comfortable ruts and routines. Start doing new things together. Learn together. Get creative together. These are all things that help a relationship stay fresh. Right? But it builds on the foundation of mutual love and respect and communication. That's the foundation of a healthy relationship. As soon as there starts to be lies, infidelity, playing games, passive aggressiveness, all sorts, then we're having problems. And everyone has to be completely okay telling the other person the truth, being honest with them. And sometimes people, they just aren't. They're afraid to tell the truth to their partner. And I would ask those people, why do you want to be in a relationship when you're afraid to tell the truth to your partner? I don't know about you, but I'd want to be with someone that would be willing to listen to me and not judge me for telling them the truth. Because if you think your partner is going to judge you or criticize you for telling them the truth, that's sabotaging intimacy. That's no relationship that's going to work. Now, all relationships are tough in this day and age. And adding a spouse who's bipolar makes it that much more difficult. But I am convinced, with proper communication and trust, it can absolutely work. As long as you're willing to accept where your person is and not try to control their moods and to control how they feel, because that's pretty impossible. But the person who does have the illness, the bipolar, can do what's best for themselves to make the four shades less likely to occur. Because I know for me, when I don't abuse drugs and alcohol, when I exercise, when I eat well, and I sleep well, I am much less likely to get the manias and depressions. Absolute truth. Now, I did not say 100% unlikely to get them, because in my experience, they have never gone away completely. And as the spouse of someone who has bipolar, you got to understand that. Regardless if there's medicine, supplements, and all the other spiritual stuff going on, the symptoms may not go away completely. And you got to be okay with that. But as long as you're honest and you trust one another and you feel comfortable telling each other how you really think and feel, there's no reason why it can't work out. Because I always say, if two people agree they love one another and they're both attracted to one another, and just to agree to make it work no matter what, it can work. But all too often what happens is someone starts losing some attraction, and then their emotions lead them elsewhere. And they don't feel like putting in the work to the real relationship. They don't communicate any longer, and they start making the other person guess what they're thinking and feeling. But if you have the emotional maturity to communicate, let people know, even if it's a hurtful truth sometimes, the bitterest truth is better than the sweetest lie. Hey, I'm losing attraction for you. And honestly, something I see women do more than men, but men can do it too. But you gotta be honest. You gotta know what's going on with it. Because it can work. These things can work if you're both being honest. So, yes, relationships like this can be tough, but by no means are they impossible. Just remember, communication and trust. Being honest and loyal. And just being willing to work on the relationship. That's it. It seems so simple, but a lot of people just aren't willing to do it. Especially in this day and age where it's so easy to meet new people. A lot of people would rather just give up than work on what they already got. But you got to agree that you're on the same team together. You want to work this out together. And you want to agree to be there for each other no matter what. That was the point of marriage vows, right? So you can have that sense of safety. And all too often, though, people don't have this sense of safety. And they have fear of abandonments because, guess what? Lots of times people do leave. They do. But I'd like to think when you find the right person, this might not be the case. But look at the divorce rate out there. It can be pretty tough. But I still believe with honesty, trust, communication, any relationship can work. Unless it's with a narcissist because they're not really capable of being honest. And if you're not capable of being honest, there's no capability to have intimacy. They sabotage it. And same with psychopaths as well. Like antisocial personality disorder. That they're rough. But even something like BPD, bipolar, anxiety, depression, you can work with them. You can work with it. It's going to be difficult, but they can be worked with. Right? And you both got to be willing partners in this agreement. You can't let any resentment start to build up. If you agree to be with someone who has bipolar and you're starting to resent their depressions, resent their manias, or whatever, and their ever-changing moods, you got to let those resentments out. You got to communicate them. Because if you don't, they're going to build up. And then you'll start getting mad at yourself for staying in the situation. So don't try to think you're a better person than you are. Because it's not something very easy to deal with. It's just not. But it is possible. But you got to really play it out. Play out the tape. Am I really going to be okay with this over time? And like I said before, if they're not willing to get help, they're not willing to admit they have a problem, there's nothing you can do. You can try to point to their mistakes and hold up the mirror, and that's really all you can do. And the rest of it is up to them. So that's my episode for today. Hopefully someone was able to get something from this. And I think one of my next videos is going to be about Oscar Wilde and how he's the original Mr. Red Pill. So with that, have a great rest of your day.